but also with Ulrika playing us in with some lovely music she's chosen, especially to blend with the occasion. You've got a sneak preview of our amazing platform speakers. I'm hoping most of you know the exits. The toilets are just outside for the Trades Hall, who've been very helpful in our setting this up. But of course, the main people we have to thank is the team, Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism, who put together such an extraordinary program, and you for coming along to share it with us. When we're dealing with these topics, it's really special to share them with people who are like-minded, who are also working to combat and challenge and resist against any form of racism. And it really does help all of us to be together and to share. I'm going to not go into further detail other than to point out the agenda for you and to mention that we're streaming, but not the audience. We're streaming the speakers because obviously for all sorts of reasons, lots of people were keen and interested, but couldn't physically be with us. So we have had a link on YouTube that we've been able to send to them. And I expect we're going to have some people tuning in from very far away, further than Scotland. That's my contacts. But yes, I know somebody's tuning in from Geneva, and I think we'll probably hear from other people tuning in from further away. But the audience will not be included in the streaming, and the streaming will end with Esther's beautiful Yiddish songs. And but we will still be here because then, as a spectacular bonus, we've got František playing the cello that will just, well, it will bring you to tears. It's a very, very haunting and moving experience to listen to František play the cello, performing pieces that were written by composers who tragically died in the Holocaust, in the concentration camps. So let us thank Ulrike, who you may have seen billed as being with a group, but her group were unable to be here. Isn't she fabulous? She's agreed to come on her own and sing for us. Thank you.
Well, as I'm missing my band, you have to make up for it. So I think it's quite topical. We start with the song what all of this is about, which is it's about fighting fascism. So yeah, so basically I invite you all to sing along to Bella Ciao. Questa mattina mi sono alzato. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Questa mattina mi sono alzato. Ho trovato l'invaso. Partigiano, portami via. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh mi sento di morire. E quando io, oh partigiano, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. E quando io, oh partigiano, tu mi devi seppellire, mi seppellirai sulla montagna. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Mi seppellirai là sulla montagna, sotto l'ombra d'un bel fiore. E tutti quelli che passeranno. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. E tutti quelli che passeranno. Dice un bel fiore, che è il fiore da partigiano. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Che è il fiore da partigiano. Morto per la libertà. All right. Okay, Vicky said one more. So in that case, it's Well, you probably all know that song. And it's for someone special who can't be here today. For the boys I have known, and I've known some, until I first met you, I was lonesome. But when you came inside me, my heart grew wide, and the old world seemed new to me. You are really what I have to admit you. Find expressions that really fit you. And so I've wrecked my brain, trying to explain all the things that you mean to me. Buy me a biscuit shame, please let me explain. Buy me a biscuit shame, let your crown. Buy me a biscuit shame, again I'll explain. It means you're the fairest in the land. I could say Bella, Bella, even say wunderbar. Each language only tells me how grand you are. I try to explain. Buy me a biscuit shame, buy me a biscuit shame, it's that you're grand.
Thank you so much, Ulrika. We will see her again, don't worry. She's going to accompany Esther when Esther sings us out of the streaming part of the meeting with her magnificent Yiddish songs. I'm Vicky. I'm a proud member of Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism, and the Fragility of Freedom, the theme of this year's Holocaust events, means a lot to all of us in so many ways. In my case, it seems that I might be a bit old to be talking about my mother and father, but they met in concentration camp. They were from completely different countries. And one of the aspects of Fragility of Freedom representing to me just how relevant it still is today is that when they were liberated, it was not freedom. They were still caught behind the barbed wire for a very long time, and they were never allowed to go to their respective homes again. So I think then for people having to start their new lives, having lost so many people, having lost their identity, having lost everything that was familiar to them, starting all over again, there are so many challenges, and we are so aware of them going on as we speak. In the case of my family, I was the only child, and my mother died when I was a baby. So there was my father in debt, because in French Canada, there was no NHS, and things were not straightforward and not easy. And everybody in this room has a story, and many of those stories coincide with mine. I just mention why this is something, an event that I'm so honored and privileged to be part of and to share with all of you. Esther is going to introduce a video that she has recorded with a very special woman with a very special story. So I'll ask Esther to take a mic so that she can be heard both on the streaming. Thank you.
Is that okay? Can everybody hear me? Good. I'm going to be very, very brief. So I went to interview Vlodka. She was a child in Warsaw during the 1930s and at the beginning of the war. She was 9 years old in Warsaw when the Nazis came in. And she's 92 now. She's in an old people's home. And when I went to talk to her about her experiences, we were in a very public space. And so the sound is pretty bad, actually. There's lots of stuff going on in the background. So I've given it subtitles. So you should be able to, if you can't hear her, you should at least be able to read what she said. She doesn't talk actually about what happened at the end of the war. So I feel that I should say to you that she obviously survived. Her family survived. Her twin sister also survived. And her parents did as well. But she talks a bit about what happened towards the end. It's very chaotic. But I just wanted to let you know that they all came through. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that she talks a bit about a couple of other people. Michal Klepflish, who was one of the Jewish people who did a massive amount of work to get people out of Warsaw and to get people out of the ghettos. But also Marek Edelman and a woman who became his wife. Marek Edelman was one of the leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, and he lived in London actually, and he He wrote a book which you can get at the bookstall at the back. I think Ursula's holding that up, called The Ghetto Fights, and I would absolutely recommend that to everybody. It's an incredible book. But without further ado, I will pass you over to the video.
Thank you. And we will be seeing more of Esther, so that's good too.
They was they overused them equality mainly internationalism
Yes.
and just mainly equality when I think about it.
And your father was very involved.
And he was one of the leaders. He was well, especially in the youth sections for the children. And he edited the papers, the books I did, and some of the other papers. And I remember when they used to take me and my sister to walk. We were very upset because so many people in the street wanted to talk to him. But he would forget we were with him.
Yes. So,
And my mother was very active. She was a Zionist. The left by the Sion. And she was a headmistress of a Yiddish primary school in Warsaw before the war. So that, so that during, as soon as the Germans came, she was organizing in that school a kitchen where they hungry children and stuff.
did you go to that school?
And sometimes, before the war, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was meant to be, but yes, yeah, yes.
What was it like, Warsaw? This was in Warsaw.
That was in war.
And what happened during the war when the Germans came?
I remember that the Germans coming in and motorbikes and tanks and all. But it's very quickly, but gradually, at first I think the Germans themselves had not made up their mind what to do about the Jewish population. So yeah, but at first the placards and all this were used to give away all the, but not from belonging stuff, I don't know, jewelry or records, and and then the, then the ghetto war began to be built. We didn't quite know what was the war about, and then there was an order for all Jews to move into, which was a very large part of Warsaw. The ghetto was almost a third of Warsaw. And what we become the story. But my parents left as soon as the Germans marched in, mainly because they thought that my father was known probably in Germany, but he was some special danger. So they don't take people. There was a sort of party, the family party. A lot of people began to try to leave Warsaw, trying to go east, trying to get either to Russia or maybe Lithuania. but I thought to people were really the men. So I know that in the ghetto,
Okay.
there were men there, but the majority of the women, because so many men escaped, tried to escape east. And my mother's family did to the back, which became the ghetto. But my other grandparents lived outside. We moved from the grandparents lived outside the ghetto back to the ghetto to when the ghetto was built. And eventually my mother came back, struggled herself back. By that time, the Russians had a pact with the Germans. So my father was called. He was also trying to get back and then taken to prisons and gulag camps. But that's how to survive the war in Russia. But my mother came back, managed to smuggle herself back.
So did your grandparents move in with you?
No, the grandparents lived outside the ghetto. I don't know why. They moved to something called the Little Ghetto, with a bridge. There was that little bit of Warsaw, a separate bit, where they moved. I never saw them again, because it was very dangerous to walk through that bridge. But my mother used to visit them.
Even though it was so dangerous.
Yes, yes, yes.
Could you tell us about the resistance in the box?
Yes. Yes, I knew almost immediately that there were lots of secret things that were being organized that we as children shouldn't tell everybody, but we saw bulletins distributed.
How old were you then?
When it all started, but when I was in the ghetto, almost 9. But we got
The same age as your great granddaughter.
they were obviously didn't go to school, so I had all the time to sit around and listen to what's going on. And my mother used to be visited by these young people like Mara Dedelman, I've always known since I was a child. In different things, in some secret meetings. And I knew that there was a secret library used to go to. We were not actually going to one of the secret schools that I got with all the children, but I knew something in the but there was I don't organize it again concepts. I remember going to a puppet show on my birthday. That was the best year of it.
And could you tell us about what happened to you? What happened in the Warsaw Ghetto to you? So how the resistance?
Well, eventually, we had to hide the bankers and family, my mother's family, we were living together in the same block of flats and the bankers and hiding places. And so much was happening. I remember thinking lights and hunger and hiding and knowing how people were being shot and holes and found and wardrobes and places dragged out.
You were with your mother and your sister.
Yes, and my mother's family, both parents and aunts and some uncles. In the ghetto, time, I was in the ghetto till it was a few weeks before the prison. And in February, end of the year,
You were taken out.
Out, yes, by the Bundes organization.
The
The
Bundes.
secret one.
Mm-hmm. And where did you go to?
So many places. No, Michał Klepfish, have you heard his name? Michał Klepfish, my hero. No,
Klepfish.
Michał Klepfish.
Klepfish, yes.
Yes.
I didn't know him before. He came. He must have known where we were hiding, which bunker, and he just told us, or told my mother, that he found some family who were prepared. I only survived because of many Poles were prepared to hide us and took such a great risk.
Yes. So you were hidden in somebody's house.
Yes, not well. We were together at first with a very elderly couple that Michał knew. But once the uprising began, I remember we were in a house where we could just outside the ghetto wall. And I do remember just that was Easter and Passover. The Germans suddenly marching in and get to the big gate into the ghetto and pouring petrol into the houses immediately and people jumping from the buildings which were high and being shot.
Yes.
But I didn't stay with the same people because they found it too dangerous for two of us. So I went to some different families.
This was you and your sister.
Yes.
Yes. And you moved around. And this was
Some other 3 times into the families
yes.
outside the Warsaw and then back to Warsaw.
Until the end of the war.
Well, no, because there was the Warsaw uprising a year later,
Yes.
in 1914,
Yes.
and everybody was forced, everybody was deported or told to leave Warsaw. So I remember being in some little camp where people were being segregated. Some to go to work, the local people, Polish people. And for the first time, I remember the men, they wanted to hold my hand because if they had a child with them, they were not likely to be sent as slaves later.
Right. Yes. The people you didn't know.
Well, no people I did. Well, no. So at that point, I was with this very young couple. He was, unfortunately for his wife more than me, was always drunk and really out of control, beating his wife. So he never did anything to me. to Warsaw, which was completely ruined. Found some flat still waiting for someone to come. And eventually, I was very helpless somehow.
Yes.
I didn't have any shoes, it was winter. Someone came, that was Marek Edelman's wife, she became later Ala Margolis, who came to the house to collect me. No, by that time the Russians, I got the bit that by that time the Russians have already, the Germans were not there any longer.
Yes, yes. So it sounds like, I suppose when you're a child, you just move, don't you? You go wherever you go, and there's no sense of there's no overview. So these are just things that
it
you
seemed
live
that
through.
it was normal. Whenever
Yes.
some people didn't feel about it. Well, that's how it was.
Yes,
It was normal.
that's how it was. That you do what you
And
do.
I knew I was more, we were more kind of like privileged in some ways as a family. Managed for a long time to survive in the ghetto because of the connections and being more prepared, maybe like big family. Prepared somehow when they knew the Germans were coming. Bought a lot of sackfuls of rice and flour. I remember being. So I know the children that were coming to the kitchen, where occasionally we went to. They were so starving and I felt terrible being there. And they, I think, were not obviously friendly to us because we were still looking at us as we were not starved.
Yes. What do you think are the most important things, the lessons that we can take from your experiences and from the reality of the Warsaw Ghetto and the reality
I
of
don't
the
know the
Holocaust?
general lessons. I can't see that people have learned very much or anybody.
What do you think they should have learned?
Well, some people always knew it to feel other people are also human, but many people took the advantage when they could persecute or get stuff. And I suppose that might still happen. Or probably
Is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything you want to say?
Yes, I don't think because I've been through the Holocaust, I have much more wisdom than anyone else, than the people who were there at the time. There were so many such heroic people who knew how to sacrifice not almost their own families for people they didn't even know. And probably that makes me feel proud to be Jewish, remembering these people.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes, I know that a lot of people think education is the answer, but I don't see that. No, I just wonder what would have some influence on somebody who hasn't thought about it before, about the importance of treating everybody as humans, as we all are. Don't really know how to think. Never known anybody who suddenly would change their mind.
Do you think people can change their minds?
I know I've met, but this is not changing their mind. This is some German young people who who had discovered what happened, or even had fascist parents. They were brought up to think some, and then when they learned what happened, completely changed their mind. Yes.
Yes.
I'll give him the directional for the streaming, and you've got a mic there.
Hello, I'm sorry it's a flying whistle from me. My name is Lev Taylor. I'm a rabbi of a synagogue over in Newbury Park, although until only a year ago I lived on Wood Street.
Give him the directional for the streaming, and
I grew up around survivors and refugees, mostly from Germany and Austria, many of whom had met each other during or after the genocide and remained friends. One of them was my grandfather. He, at that time, he was left on one of the last trips out of Germany from Berlin after Kristallnacht and the rise of the Nazis. And at that time, the British government was limiting who it would allow into the country, only to children, only to those who had light skin and who they felt would assimilate well into British society. My granddad, I suppose, was lucky that he was counted among them, although every other member of his family was killed. Some quite early on into the genocide in Sarsfield, because they were not only Jewish but also Social Democrats, and some later on at Auschwitz. At the time, the British government were largely uninterested in taking people in, and certainly didn't want too many, and would only allow it to happen if others made it possible for them to do so. So the Quakers paid for the train and boat tickets to allow him out, and then he was put up by the Church of England in the house next to Durham Cathedral. Growing up, I always wondered what it was that allowed people, that made people participate in such a thing, that made it so easy for them to commit atrocities. And then he was put up by the Church of England, for them to stand idly by while they had in the house next to Durham Cathedral. I did not hope to find out an answer. Growing up, I always wondered, really, the truth is, participating in fascism, participating in racism, seems to come very easily to them to stand idly by. It takes a lot more fortitude to resist it. The Nazis, we now know, were largely ordinary people who, whether they were following orders or not is largely irrelevant. They joined in and persisted because that was the easy option. It is much more remarkable to think of those who resisted, who took it upon themselves to challenge fascism. That is much harder. That was also mostly done by ordinary people, people who had no extraordinary background, people who had no extraordinary skills, but who could see what was wrong and resist it. That includes all those who did what they could to get people out. That includes all those who risked their lives within Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, Poland, etc., to fight the Nazis, to fight fascism, to fight the racist genocide that was unfolding. And so it is wonderful to sit here with Stand Up to Racism, who I know have for decades. In fact, David, I don't know if you remember, but the first time we met was on the UAF. Do you remember that? No. It was a long time ago. Nearly 20 years ago. Who for a long time have resisted racists and fascists wherever they've appeared, on the streets, and also as they try to implement their policies through government, through the Rwanda plan, through the Fortress Europe, through increasing efforts to terrorize refugees and immigrants coming into this country. And so, please do carry on resisting racism, carry on resisting fascism. I know that for many of those who did survive, they explicitly wanted people to draw connection between their oppression, their experiences, and those of others. Rabbi Harry Jacobi lived not far from here until he died not long ago, and gave his speech to the United Nations towards the end of his life, where he talked about having been smuggled out of Germany in the bowels of a boat, and asked that people understood that he was no different to any of those today fleeing from any of the war-torn places or any of the places where fascism or authoritarian government is ruling once more. So please, carry on standing up to racism, carry on resisting fascism, and carry on in solidarity.
Thank you. Yes, as Lev said, he's not able to stay with us, but we're delighted that he could come back to his own stomping grounds, share a part of the event with us. I'm sure you need no introduction to our next speakers. We've got David Rosenberg, described as a radical Jewish historian, but so many things to so many people we know. And he will be followed by Sabi Dalu, who is the national co-convener of the Stand Up to Racism. And it's all really special when you have a local group like Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism with somebody from head office to share the event with us. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this event in the week when we celebrate the liberation of Auschwitz by the Red Army in January 1945. Auschwitz was established in spring 1940, initially as a concentration camp for Polish political prisoners, communists, socialists, trade unionists, gays, enemies of Nazism, including Jehovah's Witnesses. We remember the brutality that they experienced at Auschwitz I and mourn the victims of mass extermination at a separate site, Auschwitz-Birkenau, which was constructed in autumn 1942, in autumn 1941, 2 miles from Auschwitz I, and that was constructed as a killing centre with hundreds of wooden barracks and 4 gas chambers. Gas chambers were principally reserved for 2 categories of the Nazis' diverse victims, Jews and Roma gypsies. More than 900,000 Jews and 21,000 Roma were gassed to death at Auschwitz-Birkenau, mainly between 1942 and 44. Several thousand Soviet prisoners of war were gassed too. Jews across Nazi-occupied Europe arrived in cattle trucks on train lines leading directly into Birkenau. Most of the youngest and the oldest were immediately exterminated. Those from their late teens to late 30s were assessed for slave labour, which operated in a network of workshops and factories at Monowitz, a few miles from Auschwitz I. Birkenau was one of 6 isolated sites the Nazis built within Poland to perpetrate industrial mass murder in gas chambers, designed by skilled architects and engineers. The process was overseen by educated administrators. Companies supplying poison gas made handsome profits. Zygmunt Bauman and Hannah Arendt have shown This was a meticulously planned and recorded extermination in conditions of capitalist modernity. That is fundamental to understanding it. The Nazi barracks at Auschwitz I now house a remarkable museum which describe how the Nazis first experimented with mass killing methods in Germany in 1939 using disabled people who were deemed life not worthy of life. At Auschwitz, the obsession with eugenics led to selected Jewish and Roma children undergoing gruesome medical experiments. Around 2.7 million of the 6 million murdered Jews were killed in the factories of death. Auschwitz-Birkenau was the largest and operated the longest. A similar number of Jewish civilians were murdered in mass shootings in Nazi-occupied areas, especially in the Soviet Union, by Einsatzgruppen units that incorporated very willing collaborators from local non-Jewish populations where anti-Semitism was strong. Another method, cramming Jews into buildings that were then set on fire. Other Jews starved to death or succumbed to rampant diseases in the terrible ghetto conditions in which the Nazi occupiers incarcerated them, or they met an early death as overworked, underfed slave labourers. The ghettos isolated Jews from the non-Jewish population and from other Jewish communities. There were hundreds of ghettos in German-occupied and annexed Poland and the Soviet Union alone. In 1995, I visited Auschwitz for the first time through the Anti-Nazi League, who led educational trips for trade unionists and anti-racist students. Our guide then was a remarkable 84-year-old Auschwitz survivor, Leon Greenman, who died in London in 2008. From 2016 to 2019, I returned to Auschwitz annually as a member of the Unite Against Fascism education team leading the trip. We were based in Krakow for 4 days, which included 1 day in Auschwitz, where guides led us around the prison camp museum and the vast bleak space of Birkenau, which was mostly left as it was. One museum display that shocks me every time is a map that shows the extraordinary lengths the Nazis went to literally to deport Jews to death camps in Poland. One of the longest lines runs from Oslo in Norway to Auschwitz. A few hundred Jews were captured and deported from there, initially on ships, then loaded on trains. I later discovered that 46 of those Jews from Norway were on the Monte Rosa, a ship captured by the British in 1945 and repurposed. In June 1948, that very same ship docked in Tilbury as the Empire Windrush. When Holocaust Memorial Day was inaugurated here in Britain in 2001, I worried, with some justification, that if it becomes too formal, too official, this might conflict with the more organic grassroots commemorations, that the stamp of official approval might affect the content. What about other genocides before the Holocaust and since? Will they be represented? And if it became adopted into the British National Diary, would there be room to ask the awkward questions about the role of the British state? Or might an official Holocaust Memorial Day depoliticise it? I still worry about that, because the questions that still need to be asked and answered are: what did the British state and the British establishment do in the 1930s in the face of rising fascism? What did it fail to do before, during, and immediately after the Holocaust? And why? Why were so many asylum applications received from those living under Nazism simply ignored? Why were credible reports of the Nazis' mass murder in Poland and requests for extraordinary action by the Allies dismissed? Why, compared with other Western countries, were so few Holocaust survivors admitted to Britain after World War II? On the educational trips to Auschwitz and Krakow, I've contributed something that I felt was very important, but missing. And that is the story of Jewish life in Poland in the decades, indeed centuries, before their mass murder. It was not people alone being destroyed. It was a culture, a language, a civilization. that included radical progressive movements at its heart, struggling for a better world, especially in the 1920s and 30s. Jews have a 1,000-year history in Poland. And in the 1930s, they were more than 10% of Poland's whole population. They formed about a third of the population in many large cities, including the capital, Warsaw. 90% of Polish Jews then were wiped out. And Auschwitz alone doesn't tell us this. It's an endpoint of the process. What could have been done to interrupt it, to stop it? When? How? What patterns were there to fascism as it emerged? Have we seen some of these signs elsewhere? Are we indeed seeing them now? For me, the more poignant and more significant date has always been the 19th of April, 1943. And that was when the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto began, which Włodka was describing. It was an incredible act of organised resistance by several hundred starved and brutalised fighters, aged 13 to 43, which lasted nearly a month and inspired uprisings in other ghettos, even in concentration camps and death camps. And what led me to think about this and think it this way were the first grassroots Holocaust commemorations that I attended in the early 1980s, 20 years before Holocaust Memorial Day was created. And they took place in the East End, in Yiddish, the mother tongue of most Jews in 1930s Poland. They were organised by a group, the Friends of Yiddish, who met every Saturday to share Yiddish literature and song. They included refugees who survived Nazi occupation, ghettoisation and the camps. And they held a special event on April the 19th every year, where they shared experiences and cultural treasures from their early lives, remembered how Jews resisted, and always honoured the Roma, who, in the words of the chair of the Friends of Yiddish, Maya Bogdansky, died in exactly the same way and for the same reasons as the Jews. These events humanised their former lives and those of the 6 million. And paradoxically, as Poland itself, despite the very right-wing authoritarian government that has ruled since 2015 until very recently, depleted Jewish communities are growing again there in 15 cities in Poland. And anti-racists and anti-fascists there organised powerful grassroots alternative events, especially in Warsaw, to commemorate the ghetto struggles. The Jewish Socialist Group sent delegations to Warsaw in April 2019 and April 2023 to participate in these events. And I want to end with this thought, prompted especially by our last visit in Warsaw. We need to look at resistance in broader and more subtle ways. We know the headlines about courageous physical resistance against the odds, but those participants in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising had already survived 2.5 years incarcerated in the ghetto before that last physical action. How? They were actually sustained by an incredible underground system of mutual aid and support and personal support, especially around welfare, culture and education, among people treated by their occupiers as subhuman. Everyday quiet acts of concealed heroism and passive resistance that kept people alive, instilled a collective spirit of refusing to submit, that kept a flicker of hope and dignity alive. And I think we've all got so much to learn from that for our struggles against all racism, all fascism and oppression today. Thanks.
Thank you, David, for setting that scene, very much the context of why we're having this event today. Savi, can we hear from you, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me to today's very important event marking Holocaust Memorial Day. I think for me, Holocaust Memorial Day really illustrates why we should be, as Rabbi Lev said, continuing the struggle against fascism and racism today. Because I think it's important to remember what led to the rise of fascism and the importance of preventing it from happening again. And I think it's very easy. Fascism is different to, and the rise of fascism throughout the 1930s and 40s, and the horrors that we saw in the Holocaust, but also the death and destruction that we saw throughout the world, because obviously you saw 11 million people, 6 million of which were Jews that died in the Holocaust, but also we saw GRT, LGBT, disabled, all political dissidents that were also targeted and died and perished in the Holocaust. In addition to that, you also saw tens of millions of people around the world die fighting fascism, and that, you know, that, I mean, no other regime in the whole history of humanity has led to such a level of death and, you know, destruction. So I think it's an important reminder of how a lot of the conflicts that we see in the world today, it's very easy to describe any war going on as, you know, the result and the product of, you know, a fascist government and so on. But actually, we don't really see today, you know, fascism, you know, in power, implementing, you know, fascist policies like, you know, what happened in the Holocaust, and, you know, the targeting of, you know, left-wing groups, socialists, communists, trade unionists, and so on. We just don't see that today. So I think it's important to remind us all of how the rise of fascism, the Holocaust, and all the horrors that accompanied that is different to what we're seeing today. And as I said, it serves as a reminder of how we must all fight fascism today to stop that from happening again, but also how we have to defend refugee rights and challenge the racism and hatred that led to the growth and the rise of fascism in the 1930s. So, you know, anti-Semitism, you know, was very, you know, real and horrific and potent at the time. And I think if we look at the rise of fascist organisations in Britain over the last 20 years and in other European countries, it's really because of the rise of racism, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism, again today, that is leading to their growth. We're seeing mainstream political parties using horrific, inflammatory, racist rhetoric, which is enabling the growth of fascist organisations today. I mean, we see today, I think it's hard to speak here and address you all today without addressing the problems with this current government. I mean, I never would have thought 25 years ago, as a student at university, that I would ever see in Britain a government that that is so unrelentingly racist on a daily basis against refugees that are, you know, desperate people crossing the channel, risking their lives. I never would have thought you would have seen a Conservative government that would whip up such hatred and racism on a daily basis, you know, for years against these people. And not just that, the theme of this year's Holocaust Memorial Day is the fragility of freedom. And indeed it is fragile, because I don't think any of the people that are risking their lives crossing the channel would ever have thought that coming to Britain they would be sent to imprisoned in, you know, in camps essentially, like the BB Stockholm, and other sort of horrific accommodation that they're being forced to live in, like former army barracks and so on. I never, you know, would have thought that, you know, we'd see that today. And I'm pretty sure that those crossing the channel never thought that they would come to a country like Britain, one of the richest countries in the world, and be treated in such horrific conditions. The racism and also the actual conditions that they're being forced to live in are absolutely horrific. And so I think it is difficult to talk about the Holocaust, as people have said, and not really pay attention to and address the fact that today that one of the lessons that we have to learn is to defend refugee rights and to say we need a humane approach to refugees, to welcoming refugees, and that people should be treated with dignity. People should be allowed the right to work, because I think that's all people want. They just want the freedom to live and to work as human beings. That's all they're asking for. And I think we have to fight for that. And I suppose to answer Rabbi Lev's question, which was, you know, what is it that leads people to join racist organisations and fascist organisations, or show support for that? Well, I suppose it's an answer to that is what Albert Einstein said. Let me just, I don't want to misquote him. What did he say? I think he said, "The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything." And I think that's absolutely correct. It's not just the people that are evil or who carry out evil. It's the good people, the supposedly good people, who just stood by and did nothing because it wasn't them being targeted, and it wasn't, you know, their communities, their organisations being persecuted. So I think, as I said already, and others have said, that's why it's important to continue the struggle against racism and fascism. I know, as someone who's been, you know, campaigning against racism and fascism for more than 2 decades now, it can be difficult and hard, you know, to keep the fight going. But that's absolutely what we must do, because without that fight, we will definitely lose. Without having the fight, we have a chance of winning, we have a chance of defeating, but without putting up any fight, you will definitely lose. So you have to keep up the fight against fascism and racism. And remember today, we've got to fight fascism wherever it rears its ugly head, whether it's in Portland, in Dorset, with people targeting the BB Stockholm, or whether it's in Erskine in Scotland, or Yorkshire, the West Midlands, East Midlands, campaigning against Turning Point in South East London in Lewisham. We have to fight fascism wherever it rears its ugly head, and I think that is the most important lesson I think we can learn from the Holocaust. And also, we've got to challenge the racism from the mainstream that led to that, and that is legitimising and giving succour to fascist organisations. So we have to fight this horrific government and its horrific racism targeting refugees. So I suppose my final point would be to please join us on this year's March Against Racism, because now more than ever we've got to fight the racism coming out of this government, and we've got to fight this unrelenting racist rhetoric that we're seeing from the government that is allowing fascists to grow once again. And I just want to remind you all, I said that was my final point, but actually I've got the real final point. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but next week in Telford, Tommy Robinson is actually marching with fascists on Holocaust Memorial Day. And he's being allowed to do that. So obviously, Stand Up to Racism is organising a local mobilisation there. They're using the grooming issue to stir up Islamophobia and to use that issue to gain support for fascism locally. And so again, you know, hatred is hatred, racism is racism. It doesn't matter if it's Muslims being attacked, Jews being attacked, or whatever community is being attacked. Racism is racism. So we have to fight Islamophobia that those organisations are using, and we have to fight anti-Semitism. I think it's particularly important that people like us lead the fight against anti-Semitism also, because if we don't fight anti-Semitism, wherever it comes from, whether it's the right or the left, because I think some of us have seen that, because if we don't do that, then what we're seeing in France with Marine Le Pen supposedly, you know, presenting herself as some sort of champion of fighting anti-Semitism. If we don't do that, we'll be leaving, you know, the fight against anti-Semitism to be used by people like Tommy Robinson to present themselves as some sort of, you know, defender of Jews and fighters against anti-Semitism. They are not. We stand in the tradition of all those that fought the Nazis and that fought anti-Semitism and racism. So, yeah, I think the lesson is keep up the fight against fascism and keep up the fight against all forms of racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all our speakers, and we are going to have a couple of super quick announcements. They are not party political, but we're going to ask, Lorraine's got something to say, Amanda's got something to say, I've got something to say, super, super quick. Oh my goodness, and I tried to forget, but he's right beside me, so he reminded me, and I can't say no to him because everybody kept to time. First of hundreds of meetings I've chaired where I didn't have to send those little notes across. 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. Everybody was just so into the thing. Lorraine, can you speak into this and with your back right up to, yeah.
From Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism. One of the things that we've been really proud to do, that one. Oh, sorry. One of the things we've been really proud to do over the years is support Care for Calais, one of the major organisations that helps refugees here and in France. Since 2017, given a couple of years out for COVID, we've been running an art exhibition, an art auction, and we've been overwhelmed with the donations from local artists and the support of local people. So far we've raised £17,000 over these last few years. The last auction, the first part of it finished a month ago, but we were so overwhelmed with amazing stuff from artists locally that we're going to have a second part. That's going to be on the 24th of February. It's going to be very exciting. The work is still up on show at the Rose and Crown. You could still put a bid in on the text number or the email that's there, but the live auction will be the one to go to. If you want to find out more, make sure you sign up on our email sheet at the back. You'll be informed of loads of wonderful things that are going on that we're part of organising. I just want to say very quickly as well, you know, on the issue of refugees and the importance of supporting them that we've heard so far. We heard only yesterday that the 400 refugees locally are being evicted by the Home Office this coming Friday. And we'll be having a little meeting after this one to talk about what we can do about that locally. So if you want to be part of that discussion, please stay on. Thank you very much for your support. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. And Amanda's going to say something.
Great. Hello everyone. It's great to see so many people here. I'm from Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism. That's our banner over there. So Stand Up to Racism is a national organisation, as Sabi was saying. There is this demonstration on 16th of March, which is really important that we all go to. Just to say a bit about Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism. We organise this event, but I mean our aim is to unite our community against racism and fascism. And so we should support the refugees housed here who are facing eviction. We also had a local campaign here for a Syrian refugee who had a letter saying him and his family would be deported to Rwanda. So we, campaigned to support him. But the suffering that causes needs to be talked about, because this is a young man threatened, he escaped Syria, terrible journey, gets here, and then gets a letter threatening him with deportation to Rwanda, which is still a policy that they still intend to implement. And the stress was so much for him that he had to be hospitalised because he had a hole in his stomach from the stress. And apparently this is really common. So it's really important, as has been said, we need to treat each other like human beings and not dehumanise people like this. And locally, we need to support the refugees here. So I would urge you to join us, Waltham Forest Stand Up to Racism. There's membership forms at the back. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention a meeting that's happening this Wednesday. We're in Tower Hamlets Road, but there's going to be a meeting in the real Tower Hamlets on Wednesday, organised by Tower Hamlets Local History Library and Archives. And it's an intergenerational conversation on remembrance and memorialisation of the Holocaust, with some radical thinkers, and there's as well as me, there's Nadia Valman, who teaches at Queen Mary, and Barnaby Rain, who's still ridiculously in his 20s, and but doing great stuff, a great thinker and writer. And so we're going to be looking at some of the, I suppose, more challenging questions around Holocaust memorialisation and remembrance. And it's at 6 o'clock on Wednesday to 7:30. If you go to the Tower Hamlets Local History Library website, you'll find out how to register on there.
Thank you. And I get the last word on the announcements before we get to the really special musical part of the program to see us out. And it's just very quickly, and it's cross-referencing to the fact that horrifyingly we heard about the 400 who will be evicted this coming week here in Walthamstow from the hotel, thanks to the Home Office. And there is a request for people to get suitcases, large bags, duffel bags, anything that people can put their possessions in, because they are going to have to leave where they have been housed. And Eva is over here sitting with her back to the wall and waving her hand to let you know that she can be your contact, where to drop them off or how to organise collection of anything that the 400 people can use to transfer their belongings. Let's hope they have somewhere to transfer them to, and for that we look to Waltham Forest Council and to all campaigners. Lots and lots of you are activists, and we respect the fact that lots of you are involved in demos, events, activities, fundraising, and so on. But please remember, we are encouraging you to stay on after the beautiful musical events to talk amongst ourselves, to share information, to share the things that matter to you and that you will be involved in. And also at the back, tucked in, is a bookstall that has brought particularly curated selection of books that reference the themes that we've covered today. So please don't go without casting an eye over that. There's also posters, and of course, once again, the cakes, very special, because if they'd asked me, obviously, as someone who's brought up in French Canada, the only two things I can make are popcorn and poutine. And you really, truly do not want to have too much of either of those, especially together. So thank goodness the others actually know how to bake. Isn't it? Imagine anti-racists, activists, and bakers, and you will benefit from that, because there's a fantastic array there, and tea and coffee, and of course the bar is still open. But first we have Esther singing Yiddish song, resistance songs, with Ulrike coming back as promised to accompany her.
That's a break. You're gonna sit.
Can I start to talk? I need. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to sing these songs actually to give some indication of what's been lost, and to give you some idea of all of the breadth of Yiddish culture. In Europe, before the fascists came, there was such an incredible wealth and depth of culture. There were Yiddish literature, there was books of literature and poetry. There was cinema, you know, there was a Yiddish cinema that went all the way across the continent. There was theatre, there was music, there were political organisations and cultural organisations. And the breadth and depth of that culture has been destroyed, completely destroyed. And we are here today to say never again. This is never going to happen again. I think for the first time in my life, I'm beginning to feel like it would be possible, and it's really scary. So we, you know, when the Alternative for Deutschland can have meetings where they are talking about re-migrating people, that's the language of pogroms. So I wanted to give some indication of what's been lost and to redouble our efforts that this never ever happens again. So a lot of these songs are songs of resistance. The first one is called Und du Ackerst, and it's a song of the Bund. All of the songs actually that I'm going to sing are very, if you know Yiddish songs, you'll know them. And if you're in the audience and you know the Yiddish songs, please join in. Actually, if you don't know the Yiddish songs and you're getting the hang of it, please join in, because they're really good songs to sing. I really encourage, especially this one. It's got a really, really cool chorus, so you can join in. This it's quite didactic. A lot of the Bundist songs are quite, you know, hectic, but it's still a great tune, and it's a lovely song. So but obviously I'm not going to sing it in English because I don't know them in English, and the words don't necessarily rhyme in English. But all the words are up here, so you can read it as I go for all of them. Okay. Let go. Thanks. Und du ackerst und du säst, und du wirtest und du nähst, und du haberst und du spinnst, sorg mein Volk, was du verdienst. Klein, klein, klappt der Hammer mit sein Gesang. Klein, klein, zerreißt die Ketten von Schlafenswein. Webstein, Webstuhl, Tag und Nacht, Drops und Weise von der Schlacht, bringst die Schäfer und Zerrein, voll mit Zug und mit Wein. Klein, klein, klackt der Hammer mit seinem Gesang. Klein, klein, zerreißt die Ketten von Schlafenswein. Und wie ist ein Tisch gekriegt, und wie ist Jotte Kleid, und wie ist ein scharfes Schwert, welches Glück ist der beschert. Klein, klein, klappt der Hammer mit seinem Gesang. Klein, klein, zerreißt die Ketten von Schlafenswein. Und von Abend aufgewacht, der kennt größte Macht. Wenn dein Stock erhoben wird, bleiben alle Reden still. Klein, mit seinem Gesang. Zerreißt die Ketten von Schlafenswein. Once more. Klein, klein, klappt er mit seinem Gesang. Klein, klein, zerreißt die Ketten von Schlafenswein. Okay, the next song I'm going to sing is as Brent, which means it's burning. It's got nothing to do with Brent in North London, although there's quite a big Jewish population of Brent. It's a very famous song, and it was written about Brzezik in 1936, which was a town in Poland where there was a pogrom. And it was written by Mordechai Gilbertig, who was the preeminent bard of Yiddish music. He was an incredibly talented man. Okay. Can you read this okay? Is it too small? You're so good. Okay. Bei unserem Städtel never brennt. Beige Witten mit ihr Gossen reisen, brachen und zerblassen, starker noch die wilde Flammen aus Sonnenschein. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse, unser Städtel brennt. Es brennt, brennt, noch es brennt. Unser Städtel brennt. Es haben scheint die Volkssonnen das ganze Städtlein beschwimmen. Und die Welt unser Sonnenschein brennt. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse, weil unser Städtel brennt. Es brennt, brennt, es brennt. Es kann oder kommen der Moment, wenn unser Städtel mit uns zusammen soll ein Wasser weg in Flammen, vielleicht soll ihn noch erschlagen, noch bis der Schutz erdacht. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt auf Säuse, weil unser Städtel brennt. Es brennt, brennt, es brennt. Die Hilfe ist nur in ein allein gewählt. Soll das Städtel ist auf Heil, habt die Kehle, löscht das Feuer, löscht mit deinem eigenen Blut, weil weiß, dass ihr das kennt. Steht nicht Brüder, Atemsäuse mit verlegter Hand. Steht nicht Brüder, löscht das Feuer, unser Städtel brennt. Okay, this next one is a really short song, so I'm going to sing it 4 times. But I'm singing it 4 times so that you can join in, and even if you don't know the words, you can read them, and you can just kind of hum them or la them or join in. It's a really beautiful song. It's just about the sorrow of leaving, of having to leave your home. And the tune is beautiful because it sounds a bit like a ship, which is going. Every time I think of this song, I think of that, you know, that Shire poem. No one leaves home unless hope is the jaws of a shark. Die Schiff geht auf und an, Die Schiff geht auf und an. Adieu, mein Vater. Adieu. Mein Vater. Thank you. Right, the last song I'm going to sing is a song that came on, which is the Song of the Partisans. And when I went to interview Lodka, the first thing she said is, "Are you going to sing the Song of the Partisans?" And this is what we do. Every ghetto firing, this is what we sing. The last time I did this, my mum said, "We all have to stand up." And I said, "No, let's not stand up. But actually, we should all stand up. Everybody should stand up and put your fist in the air, because this is the song of the Jewish partisans. Everybody stand up."
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. As your gates don't last in bed, Spice and shandy, on the guns of high, a book of parties are straight for Straats en wetten zijn grote maat, want voor parties are straight for ons. Straats en wetten zijn grote maat. Die morgens an der Gilden ins dabei. Then after that verschwindet mit dabei. Nur einfach haben die Sonne in der Feuer. Wir haben so gehen das Lied von Gott zu Gott. Nur einfach haben die Sonne in der Feuer. Wir haben so gehen das Lied von Gott zu Gott. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Wein. Das ist kein Lied, von einem Beuger läuft er frei. Dort hat Baum zwischen vollen Becken brennt. Das Lied gesungen mit einer Garnis in die Hand. Dort hat Baum zwischen vollen Becken brennt. Das Lied gesungen mit einer Garnis in die Hand. Ich came as to gates of Lansing flying over stand by its hand. But no other is going to show. Stands a boy coming to trouble sein Go. So come but no other is going to show. Stands a boy coming to trouble sein Go.
Thank you so much to Ulrike and Esther. And we say goodbye to our YouTube streamers because the streaming is ending. But no, not our event. Don't budge, don't move, because we have something so wonderful to finish the formal part of the event and let you get on with the cake and so on, chatting amongst yourselves, which is František is going to play music by composers who tragically died, were killed in the concentration camps. So appropriate for our event and such a magnificent interpretation. We will all be feeling something very, very moving from this music. And as he gets set up, let me